chord charts that match the multitrack are now available on loopcommunity.com. Even better, they will automatically match and follow your custom arrangements inside of Prime if you use the Music Stand app by Worship Tools. Every band member can use the Music Stand app, and their chord charts will stay in sync with the tracks. Buy chord charts individually for $1.99 or get unlimited access for only $12 a month. Head to loopcommunity.com to try it today.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Worship Fuel. My name is Matt McCoy. I'm the founder of Loop Community and the host of the Worship Fuel Show. Today, I have a very special guest, a good friend of mine. He used to live in Chicago, which is where I live, and we used to get coffee all the time and hang out. And I miss talking to this guy. And it's Patrick Mayberry, worship leader, songwriter, artist. He's written a lot of songs you've probably heard on Air One, on the radio, K-Love, Miracle, Breakthrough Miracle Power, Lead On, Good Shepherd, so many more. We're going to talk about his new EP too that came out. And so looking forward to this conversation with him. So what are we waiting for? Let's go ahead and bring in Patrick Mayberry. What's up, Patrick?
Look at me and you on here.
Look at us, all fancy too. You look great, Patrick. I like the mustache.
Well, I was going to ask you what you're thinking about being for Halloween.
I already know, dude. I've got a Olaf costume that blows up, and so I'm 5'9", and this costume is about 7 feet tall, and it's a giant Olaf costume, inflatable. And when I put it on, my kids, last year when I put it on, I couldn't really wear it for that long because my kids panicked and freaked out and were really scared by it. So this year I'm hoping it works out okay.
You're hoping to
what about you?
The night.
Yeah.
Well, I have a couple of ideas. The mustache is I think it would be really cool to be Magnum PI. Like the Tom Selleck, 80s Magnum PI. And that feels real doable. Yeah. It's like a Hawaiian shirt and some jeans. But so that's why I kind of thought I would see if the mustache could go for a minute. But I also, every year, I have this desire to wear a leather biker jacket and leather pants and a black t-shirt and spike my hair up and wear black sunglasses and be Arnold Schwarzenegger from Terminator.
That would be epic, man. You could pull that off too.
And I would say, come with me if you want to live.
Man, so, you would definitely pull that off.
Who knows?
So, gosh, man, I can't believe I've seen you a few times, but it's been since we've had you on the show.
No way.
There was a window there. We're on there a couple times in a year.
That's right.
And it's been 2 years now. And
we've been busy.
Yeah. What in the world have you been up to the last 2 years? Because a lot has changed. You moved.
Oh, man.
I don't even know if you lived in Nashville. Well, I think you did live in Nashville last time we talked. Maybe you had just moved, though.
I did, because I think I was on my back porch when we talked. Man, I've just been raising my family and trying to figure out how to be a good worship pastor and be a good husband and be a good dad. And I've been writing a lot of songs, and really have been traveling more than I ever have traveled in my whole life, especially the last 3 or 4 months. Um, and it's been a lot of fun. And I'm just really grateful, really grateful to God for um, just being way cooler than I ever imagined he was.
Yeah. Is it hard to do that with kids? I can't even imagine.
My wife is like the most rock star of rock stars, and she's totally bought in on what we're doing, and just seeing this as like this is what God has called me into and called our family into. Um,
Yeah.
but it is hard, like, and just sad, like being away from your kids. And um, my kids are at such fun ages right now that whenever I'm not with them, it feels a little bit like lost time. So um,
Mhm.
yeah, but just trusting God, and
Yeah.
getting to see a lot of really cool fruit in this season.
You mentioned that you're trying to be a good worship pastor as well. Are you on staff at a church now, or are you kind of what's that look
Yeah,
like for you?
yeah, for the last I guess a little over a year and a half, I've been helping out with our church in Franklin, Tennessee, which is it's called Church of the City. Um,
Yeah.
and it's been a
With
blast,
Darren.
man. Yep, yep.
Did you know
And
that
so,
Darren and I used to work together at Willow
no way. Well, that
way
makes
back in the day?
sense. A lot of
The
Chicago.
reason I came to Chicago was Willow Creek. I was leading worship there, and Darren was a pastor there at that time.
Love that. Yeah,
That's a
dude.
great man. That's awesome. You're at a great church. That's really great.
Yeah, it's fun, and just so many of our friends are here, and so much of our community. Um, we live just down the street, and it's fun. Like, so many people in music that I will travel with go to church here, and so it's been really sweet. And people get it. People get the life of kind of being in and out,
Hmm.
because you're in Texas one weekend, and then the next weekend you're, oh, I'm back this weekend. So
Yeah.
it's been great.
Yeah. So you released your new EP, Give It Back. Give us a
Yeah.
snapshot. Like, tell us about it. Where'd that come from, and what is it? Like, is it live, right?
Yeah. So my thing that I've always loved is is worship on a Sunday. And I love leading a band and leading with a band and leading people. And yeah, my heart, I think I think I would probably choose live over studio any day. Um
Hmm.
and
Especially for
we just
worship.
had, yeah, and we had a bunch of songs that I'd written over the last few years, and just really felt like the Lord was kind of like lining it up for it to be possible for us to record. And it's always been a dream of mine. And so I wanted to do it all, like it was all friendship. And so all my buddies played on it, and we recorded it at a buddy's studio, and invited a whole bunch of friends from church. And we just had just a night of worship, and we tried to keep it as real and raw as possible. And um, so many live things you hear now are just like, all re-recorded in a studio, which is awesome. I'm not knocking that, but I just wanted to do like the most like real, raw, approachable thing. And I think we pulled
Mm.
it off. I mean, we definitely like, I'm not, we definitely got in there and, edited stuff. My vocal is just, I perfectly sang it. No, I'm kidding. Um,
Yeah. Did
um,
you retrack all your vocals?
no, I did. I re-sang 3 phrases because you couldn't understand what I was saying, but the
Yeah.
vocal is all real, and there's lots of cymbal bleed in them. And everything
Cool.
is like from the night. And I feel like we walked the line of doing something that's really, for lack of better terms, like competitive in the world of music, but it also is just really live and raw and kind of in your face. And I'm really proud of how it turned out. My buddy Jacob Arnold, who played drums on it, was kind of the mastermind behind the production. And yeah, dude, I'm so pumped that it's out. It came out on Friday, and 3 of the songs were previously recorded. The song "Holy Spirit Come," and this other song that I did with Worship Together called "The God You Are," and then another song called "What My Father's Like" that I did on another church album, and then 2 new songs. A song called "Jesus Is Enough," and then the title track "Give It Back."
Yeah.
So yeah, dude, it's really fun, and I'm so proud of it, and glad that it's out in the world, and really hope that the songs can minister to people. And what's cool
Yeah.
about like worship recordings, and for anybody that might watch this, and you're on the fence about a worship recording with your church, it's neat because God was really present in the room that night, and and but I think that God can be just as present when someone's listening to these songs in 6 months driving in their car. And I just think
Mhm.
that's kind of a wild thing about music is, you can, God's not confined to just this one live recording, but the hope is that the songs would be shared and spread, and someone would stumble upon it on a playlist, and they can experience God right wherever they are, whenever they are 10 years from now, have a real intimate transformational experience with God. And so I think that's a cool thing about when churches record music is you're capturing something that God can use for years and years and years to come.
Yeah. That is pretty amazing. What's your favorite song on there that you think is just gonna be great for churches to sing?
Oh man. I don't know. I love them all. They're all just unapologetically like church band songs. And
Yeah.
uh I'm partial to um I mean they're all fun. I think Give It Back is really sweet and different, and it feels like a joyful it's the idea of kind of Romans 12, like in view of God's mercies, offer yourselves as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. The idea that in view of God's mercies, God gives, and so we
Yeah.
respond. And so kind of just it's a response song of all the good and all the things that God has done in our life. What choice do we have other than just to respond and give it all back to him? So I'm excited to see that song. There's a song that it seems it's funny because when you do a project, you'll get this. You have your song that you want to be everybody's favorite, and then
Mhm.
everybody has their opinion of no, this is the song. And so everybody seems to love the song Jesus Is Enough. And I love that song so much. But in my head, I'm like, no, I want Give It Back to be everybody's favorite. Um, but people are loving the song Jesus Is Enough. And it'll just be cool to see,
Yeah.
uh, over the next couple of years where the songs find their ways. I think that's the coolest thing about worship
Right.
songs is like you hear these crazy stories about, oh my gosh, I heard this song, on the other side of the continent, on the other side of the globe for all
Yeah.
sense and purposes, and it just can take years, and but I think it's so
Yeah.
cool, the power of songs.
It can take, yeah, and you never know. Like a couple years from now, like a song is found on an album, and worship leaders just eat it up. I was even thinking about something like "Holy Forever," which is a massive song, right? Huge. I remember when I first
Yeah,
heard it, like 3 years. I can't remember when it came out. Gosh, time is like time warp. But I remember like it was released. It was an awesome song, but like it didn't catch like fire until like about a year later. It took about a
yeah,
year for it to like get momentum, and now everybody has done a recording of it, and every church is singing it. Like it takes time, and you never. I
yeah,
mean, that one obviously is like a church song that's meant for every
yeah.
church to sing.
It's almost like this discipline faithfulness of just showing up and
Yeah.
obviously seeking God at every turn of the writing process and being a good steward of how you release it. But ultimately,
Hmm.
it's the Lord's going to do what He wants to do with a song, and so it's like kind of
Yeah.
our responsibility just to do our best up to a certain point, and then we just have to release
Yep.
the results and just see
Yeah.
what God does.
Yeah. And then God's just like that song. I want the world to sing that one and blows it across the
Right?
world. It's
Yeah,
awesome,
dude.
man. So, you've had seasons of being a worship pastor, seasons of being an artist, and now I guess you're artist and worship pastor. Like, what would you tell a worship leader who, feels stuck or is struggling with the current season they're in? Whatever season that is, they're just like, man, something just doesn't feel right, or I just feel, I don't know, maybe it's just complacent or just not motivated or just kind of feeling like burnt out. Not maybe not burnt out. I don't want to use the word burnt out because I feel like that's just overused, but like just kind of like, gosh, God, is this all you've got for me? What
Hmm.
would you tell worship leaders maybe asking that kind of question? Like, man, is this it? Like, is this they're in that kind of
Yeah,
place?
real practically, you should you should definitely go on a vacation. Like
Yeah.
you should go if use due diligence here, but you should go sit down with your pastor and say, "Hey, man, this is just how I'm feeling, and I think I need to like get away with my spouse or my family or whatever, and just kind of like dream for a minute." And so I'm gonna take my vacation days and go away for a week and just refresh. Because I found with me, I can get so upside down when I'm just like redlining it and um, when I'm not rested or my soul is exhausted or I'm just coming out of a heavy ministry season, especially, everybody's kind of ramping up for Christmas now. And um, it's just like, I think God knew what he was doing when he gave us like a Sabbath. And there's like rhythms of how we should operate, and especially in the creative space or in the pastoral space. And so, making sure you're like caring for yourself, would be my
Hmm.
first thought, because I don't think you can have a clear view of yourself or your ministry when you're exhausted, or when you're, because you get jaded. I'll speak for myself. I get jaded. I get just bitter. I get like, I can get into comparison really bad. And what it does is it's like all the good gifts that God has given you and all the things God is doing through you and in your ministry, you can just completely diminish them. And it's almost kind of like you're saying, well, what God's doing here isn't as good as that person. And I do that often when I've found that when I get really, really like, and I'm not just saying like tired, go take a nap. I'm just saying like you've poured out and you've poured out and you've dreamed and you've dreamed and you've poured into people and you've done 9 million services. Um, you just gotta rest. Um,
Hmm.
and then it's out of that rest. I have this theory that for me, it's like rest leads to like true rest, like a not just like a quick nap, but rest leads to boredom, and boredom leads to restlessness, and then restlessness leads to like new innovation and
Hmm.
wanting to hear a new vision from God. And that's the thing that like I've like kind of clung to. It's like, oh, I don't have any new ideas. And then for me it starts with I need to rest. And then when I get to the other side of rest, I tend to get bored. And I don't feel like we ever get bored anymore as humans, because we have our phones, we have social media. There's just so much vying for our attention. And just the days of like getting in a car and driving for 3 hours and you're just like there's nothing to do but listen to the radio. Like those days don't exist anymore. And so I have to find ways to like almost get bored to where I don't have anything going on. And then out of that, it's like I start to get this. restlessness to be like, oh, like it's, I see it as like it's all a process and I can't get to one step until I've done the other. And then when I get to
Hmm.
this restlessness state, it's like, okay, God, like, what do you want me to hear? I don't think you want me to stay in this state of boredom or rest boredom, but what do you want me to hear? What are we dreaming up
Hmm.
next? And then it starts to birth these new ideas and these new innovations. And
Yeah.
that took me a handful of years to figure out. But so for any, and that's, maybe speaking a little bit to the creative side, but I think just as much to the pastoral side. And so for anybody who's in that spot
It,
of, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, Patrick, what you just said makes me think of that Bible verse in John. I think it's like, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it dies. If it dies, it brings forth much fruit. That like there is something about like putting like the redlining to death in a way. Be bored, and there is life. There is something that comes out of that. There is fruit that comes from not pushing so hard. It just made me think of that
Yeah.
scripture when you were talking.
Yeah. And just not treating things as urgency all the time. And
Yeah.
um, my wife said something to me the other day. I was like kind of freaking out about something, and I needed her to like hurry up or something. And she said, "Your urgency is not my emergency." And I was like, "That's that's the funniest statement." Like, it sounds like a
Yeah.
pastor trying to write a kitschy statement, but it's so
Yeah.
true. And so often in church world, we can fall into that of like
Hmm.
someone, just you feel this sense of like urgency. We've got to plan this. We've got to do this. It's got to be bigger and better. And it can just make you go crazy. And so um, I think just finding seasons of pulling away and rest and being with the Lord and asking God what he's up to and what is next. It's also like just emotes a sense of trust of like, I can take my hand off the plow for a minute, knowing that I need to like realign and rehear what God is saying and what God is, where he's
Hmm.
leading the vision. It's kind of like Jesus being asleep in the boat when the storm came. Like, he wasn't freaking out. That he was able to rest. And so Jesus got a way to rest. And so I think that's just a really beneficial. And I've started to pick up on telltale signs of when I can tell, oh yeah, I'm going a little too hard. I need to pull back, and because I get a little crispy around the edges and real
Yeah.
impatient and just, you know, start judging the good that God is doing in other people's lives, and being
Hmm.
like, why is that happening for me? And I'm like, oh buddy, you okay, you're not in a good spot here. Um so that
Yeah.
totally doesn't answer your question, but I felt like that's where the Lord was leading.
No, it does. Yeah. I think that's good. I think that's a really good. So if someone can't take a vacation, maybe what does that look like? Maybe just like turning off your phone and taking a 1 day, do nothing, like a Sabbath. That's why the Sabbath is so important.
Yeah, taking a Sabbath, and there's so much power like in community. Like, um let's say you're a worship pastor and you're kind of the only person on staff at your church in the worship capacity. Like, reach out to some other worship leader pastors in your town, in your area, and just be like, hey, can we
Hmm.
go to lunch? And there's so much power in just, I don't want to use the word commiserating, but it's the best going to
Yeah.
lunch with someone who's in the same role as you at another church, and you're not there to bash anybody or trash talk or gossip, but you get it. You both get it. We get
Yeah.
that pastors have last minute big ideas, or we get that volunteers sometimes don't get the vision, or they don't care about being on time, or we there's just something really powerful about being able to have a friend or friendships of other worship leaders and worship pastors just to be in community with. be able to
Yeah.
pray for each
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, that's all very, very good advice. That's for
other.
real. Um, so there's a question on here that I feel like we talk about a lot with people, and I want to tweak it differently. Because the question is basically like, what would you tell a worship leader that has, started songwriting and wants to release their own music? And that question, I think, has just been talked about so much. Let's tweak it a little bit, because I'd be curious to hear your perspective on this, because you did that. Like you were grinding. When I knew you in Chicago at Soul City, like you were grinding, you were songwriting, you were you were producing your own music, I believe,
Yeah.
releasing music with the church. And, you were wanting to like kind of end up doing what you're doing now, I believe. And what would you say to worship leaders who like for years have been songwriting, trying to release music, maybe releasing music, maybe not, and it just feels like the dream is dead? There was a dream there, and it's not happening. Doesn't come to fruition. Because I think there's a lot of worship leaders in that spot. It's not just like, hey, they want to start songwrite and start releasing their own music. Maybe they've done it, and it just feels like it's just not happening. What would you say to that? What do you think?
Oh man, I don't like that question.
That is a hard one,
Um,
isn't it? I threw a hard ball at you, Patrick, but just because
yeah.
I know that you know it, I think you know. I think you understand, kind of like you were just talking about having lunch with a worship leader. Like you get worship leaders, you get what's going through their minds. You get these people who want to
Uh-huh.
songwrite, want to release music, want to maybe have a song on the radio, want to tour, but it just never happens. It never comes to fruition.
Um, I was sitting with a friend yesterday who was a pastor for probably 30 years and kind of stepped away from pastoring, and he lives in Nashville now, and he's been pursuing songwriting, and he's the neatest, freest person that I've 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 been around in years. And um I said something to him yesterday. I was like, you know what I've noticed about you? When we hang out, you don't have an agenda. Like you never have an agenda. You just want to be here. And he's like, I
Just
just
happening.
think that he's in his 60s, and he's like, I think that's what God's called me into. And he said for the longest time, he wanted to move to Nashville and be the guy. And he wanted to be like this voice and this personality that people look to. And he's just like, I just don't think that's me. I don't think I don't think that's what God has for me right now. And we this is I hope this connects, but he's written more songs for other people that are like totally impacting people. And he's writing
Mm-hmm.
songs, and they're going viral on Instagram. And he's not singing them, but he carries a perspective that the 18-year-old girl singing it does not necessarily carry. She gets glimpses of the perspective, but he's walked through it. And so he can write songs about redemption and the mercy of God that an 18-year-old just can't quite grasp. One day they will, but he's 65, and he just has
Mm-hmm.
walked through valleys that nobody else has walked through. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's, he's just got his own story to tell, and he's a
Yeah.
fascinating dude. But I sat there with him, and I thought there will come a time when, you know, I'm not the guy leading worship anymore, because I don't need to be, because there'll be somebody younger and better and more talented than me. But you know what my job will be? My job will be to teach them everything that I know, and to any like to teach them about reading Matt Redman's Face Down when I was in college, to teach them
Mm-hmm.
about uh here's why I say this from the stage and I don't say that. Here's why I say, hey, turn and greet 45 people instead of hey, turn and greet someone. I'm like, nobody cares about that. But if you make it funny, people are like, oh, that's fun. Like, I like being here. And it helps worship for the next Sunday. And just all the little things that you and I have learned from years and years and years of studying other worship leaders and just leading rehearsals. And oh, I can be 10 minutes late on a Sunday, but if I am, here is all the things that happen that affect the culture for the whole team for the next 5 years. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think, to answer your question, there's nothing that hurts worse than wanting something so bad. And I'll specifically say, to want to write songs and want to tour and want to put records out, and it doesn't happen. Like, that just
Hmm.
hurts and it sucks. Like, that
Hmm.
that's hard. And if that's you, like, there's like, I'm sorry. Like, that is like, I would die. Like, I've had seasons where that's not been my story, and I can't attest to anything other than just like some luck that it's worked
Hmm.
out for me. Because I don't want to say it's God's favor, because God has immense favor on whoever's listening to this. Like, I didn't follow God any better than you are. I probably followed him worse. Um, but 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 I would just say encouragement, like, don't write yourself off. Uh, if you love the craft of songwriting, but it's just, maybe you're not the voice on the radio, because maybe it's the young kid next to you that has
Hmm.
been, showing up to your ministry, but you get to help that kid write songs because you've seen God in different ways than he has, and you've walked through some serious storms in your life, in your marriage, in your ministry, that kid hasn't yet. And now it's like, maybe the roles are turning to where, I just think, maybe it's because I'm getting old, but I'm like, man, we need more and more and more old people, seasoned people in ministry, especially in worship ministry. And it's like,
Yeah.
getting on Instagram and posting a clip and it going viral is cool. And I
Hmm.
I want that to happen. I would love for that to happen to me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but a 20-year-old posting a clip on Instagram about God's faithfulness and it going viral is amazing. And God uses that. And that 20-year-old knows God's faithfulness. But you and I, we know God's faithfulness as almost 40-year-old dudes. A
Hmm.
60-year-old knows God's faithfulness as a 60-year-old. And it's just different levels. It's like, the deeper you get, the
Yeah.
further you get into life and years, life is hard. Horrible, bad things happen. Things that we would never dream or imagine happen because we live in a broken world. But time and time again, it's like, I didn't know I was going to see
Hmm.
God's faithfulness through my parents getting really sick. And that's been a whole hard season of life. But it still
Hmm.
hurts, but I'm seeing God be faithful in a new way. And it's like deepening the well. And it's like, so it's changed my songwriting, and it's changed my theology, and it's changed how I lead worship. And um, my buddy at church who's 20, and he's a talented dude, and he's just so kind, and he's just an upstanding young gentleman. He doesn't know God like that yet. And I believe that he
Yeah.
will. But it's my job as a worship pastor, as a minister, like, for the sake of the gospel and the church moving forward, like, I don't want to hoard my gifts. They
Yeah.
were all given to me, one, by God, and then two, I learned it all from watching Matt Redman, or watching Chris Tomlin, or watching Christian
Yep.
Stanfill, or Cody Carnes, or
Yeah.
Phil, or Brandon. And so they're not mine. And so
Yeah.
it's my job, it's our job to start giving them away. And
Yeah.
if they win, the church wins.
Yeah.
And that's like
Right.
how I want to view it. Like, I don't know, but you gotta. It's hard to die to yourself, especially when you want it so bad. Like
Yeah.
that's a pain that there's nothing I can say that alleviates that pain.
Yeah.
Especially,
I know.
it's just the music, the music and all. That's what we want,
Yeah. Right. And it's a tale as old as time as well. I think it probably athletes feel the same thing. They grow up their whole life thinking they're going to be an NBA basketball player, and then they don't
Yeah,
make the cut. And now they're a realtor or something, and they're like, "What am I doing?" I was supposed to be an NBA player.
yeah.
Man, well, that was a curveball question, and I think that there's a lot of gold in there. Thank you for answering that. We only have a few more minutes left, but I want to ask you one final question. Give us just a peek behind the curtain of like, what does just a normal day or week look like for you? Like when you wake up in the morning, are you the breakfast guy in the morning? Are you making all the kids breakfast, or are you doing school drop off, or like, what does a day look like for you typically?
All the things. Okay, so typical day. Um,
Do you
yeah,
wake up
it's
early?
I mean, so my daughter is in middle school and her school starts at 7,
Oh
and then our
wow,
boys
early.
are in elementary school and they start at 8. So my wife has started grad school, and my wife goes to school on Mondays and Tuesdays. So she has to get into Nashville. So she takes our daughter early in the morning, and then she goes to her class, my wife. And then I get my boys, we all ride bikes to their school because their school's in our neighborhood. And then I get them dropped off. For a minute, I was trying to run for my
Mhm.
health, to be a healthy human.
Yeah,
And I feel like I did
yeah,
that for about 4 days, but I still like to say for a
yeah.
while I was trying to run.
That's
But
what
dude,
happens to me too.
my days are
You
all
get
over the
going
place
for a few
sometimes,
days and then it's over.
right? Um,
Yeah,
I love going to coffee with people, and I love hanging out with young songwriters and young artists. Um, Today I'm at my church office and I'm bebopping around here doing some stuff. Um, so I have a little studio space, and sometimes I'm over there songwriting or tracking vocals for some demo, um, and then some days I'm just gone. I'm not even here, and I miss out on all the fun stuff of life and making dinner with my family and shuttling my kids to soccer practice because
yeah,
I'm in some town playing some random worship thing. So
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
fun season of life, and it's very all over the place. I feel like I
yeah,
know what I'm doing the next hour, and that's about it. And that's
yeah.
anything more than that is too much brain
Right.
capacity to keep.
I know. I feel the same way. My wife was giving me a hard time yesterday. Actually, she was saying, "You just live like